introduce my guest today, a soul sister, a sacred sister, and a woman that I know lightly, but I already feel that I know deeply. And her name is Karen Whelan. Welcome, Karen. I'm so thrilled that you're here with me today.
Thank you, darling. Thank you. That's beautiful. Yes. And I'll echo that back. I do know you lightly, but I do feel I know you so deeply. You know, it's the shared wisdom and the shared knowing of each other, you know, which is so beautiful. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, you're welcome. And just a little bit about you, just to share with the audience. She's a transformational psychotherapist, intuitive consultant, a tantric teacher, a rising star healer, a workshop facilitator, and a retreat leader. And in addition, she's also an international best-selling author. Karen is also the founder of SOULution Therapy, which offers transformative services to companies, individuals, groups, and couples and teenagers. And she's worked with clients from all over the world, and newly married with 2 children, and really living a life of yes. And we're really going to be focusing on the yes in this conversation. Yes to you, yes to your calling, yes to your healing, and yes to your higher vibration. So let's get after it.
Yes. Yes.
So Karen and I, we did have a previous interview. However, sometimes you just have these technology snafus, but the beautiful thing is we get to meet each other again at a whole new level. So I'm really looking forward today. So, if you don't mind just telling the audience a little bit about where you're from on the planet and what is the soul of the work of your country? Because I do believe that every country has its soul, and as human beings do. And tell me a little bit about your home country.
Yeah, so I'm here. I'm based in Ireland. I'm on the southeast, which is the bottom of Ireland. We would be kind of known for the glass factory. We would have created water for crystal. A lot of our customers were in America. So for Times Square, we made that crystal ball, the Millennia Ball that came out on the night in Times Square. So that's where I am. Ireland to me is, we can always say this about our own country, but Ireland, it's really ancient, and I love that about Ireland. It's very magical, very ethereal. I spent my whole life wanting to run away from Ireland. Never happy with where I was, always wanting something bigger and better, looking for something more out there. But again, that was just coming back to the realization that, it's not out there, it's all within. So now I'm in a place where I love the country I'm from. It's rich in its culture, and it's so ancient, way back in the time before it was even colonized by Britain. We were just druids, shamans. A lot of our time was spent in prayer with magic spells. We have Newgrange, which is so ancient. And it's set up that on eclipses and solar eclipses, that the sun will come directly through it. So mathematically, it's a genius of a stone ring, really. So there's a lot of stone forts over here. Very fairyland. I've had people say to me, it's very fairyland. Now, of course, you hear of the Irish leprechaun. So it's very magical. Ireland, as I said to you before, it is placed, if you look at Earth, it is placed up in the heart part of the planet. So, is the heart vibration of planet Earth. That's how I like to look at it. We're in the heart vibration. It's actually known to be an island that is standing on a lot of quartz crystal. What I love about it is that I see that in the people around me. For a country that has been oppressed and has, experienced a lot of discrimination, oppression, and abuse, if we go right back, first, we were invaded, a lot of our women were raped, and we were sent down to Africa and sold over there. And that's why you have what we call, you hear that word, the Irish blacks, that's where that comes from. Then after we were owned, now, we had the Industrial Revolution, then we had all the houses where the mothers were sent out of wedlock to give birth, and their babies were taken from them, and their babies then were put up for adoption. On top of that, then, Ireland was this strong island of faith, and we had a strong belief in our religion. And unfortunately for Ireland, then we have the spiritual rape, because it unveiled itself that the church really just held space for sexual abuse. So, that if you think of the trauma of that on the psyche of the Irish people, then we had the banks that totally abused us. I mean, I've grown up witnessing my father's pension being taken by the banks and by the government. He worked from the age of 15. He did not retire until of age, when he turned 66, retirement age. And his pension was taken. His pension was used to bail the banks. So Ireland, as a culture, we've never known how to be independent or how to mind our own selves. So we're almost like that teenagey vibration. We have been abused. So there's this psyche of abuse. In other words, there's a victim consciousness that has been very embedded into this society. Despite all of that, we are known for our generosity and our love. We've got big hearts.
Well, tell me about that, though, because this is such an important thing. So just taking a huge breath, and just hear about all the oppression on all different levels, right? Because we look at, ultimately, we're all here for seeking of freedom, right? Freedom is the ultimate, freedom from oppression. But we also want to be free from fear, and personally, right? So we have the freedom seeking of our personal growth, and then we have the freedom seeking of our ascension in this world, to be able to free to get money, free to choose who we love, free to be not constricted by government, free, all of these freedoms, and realizing freedom isn't free. And when you think about all the oppression that you just shared with us, and yet, tell me about the hope.
Yeah. Like, it hits me, I guess because I grew up here, I didn't recognize the generosity of our heart and the style of that. I would have friends who were from all over the world who would say, God, Ireland is such a beautiful place to visit. People are so beautiful. They're so interactive. They're really gorgeous. And I grew up, I had a grandmother who had 14 children, 7 boys, 7 girls, lived in genuine poverty. She could not take the contraception pill. She was not allowed, because we were heavily informed by the church. So my own grandmother, so I'm only 44, so this is not even that long ago in terms of history. My own grandmother was not allowed to take care of her own body. And she went through, because she had miscarriage as well, she went through 16 pregnancies. I mean, that is, for any woman who's gone through one pregnancy alone, that is a massive ordeal on the body. So, and that was the impact. And I grew up with this woman where she would, even though she had nothing, even though her body had gone through so many births, this woman would have the fire on in the sitting room, because the sitting room and kitchen were combined. She was always baking. The door was always left open. There was never a lock in the door. Anyone could come in. You were always welcomed. You were always fed. You were always nurtured. And I think because we have been so oppressed, this is my viewpoint on the piece around humanity for me, because I know it personally. I think when you have been so stripped down and everything is taken from you, everything you're told, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't have this, you can't have that. And you've been so held back. If you can really come into your heart space, and if you can find compassion for humanity and offer out love as a vibration, to me, you are a pretty epic human being. You are incredible. You are incredible. My grandmother emanated that. She could have been very angry with life. She could have been very angry with her society, with how she was treated as a woman. She could have, and I'm sure she was many a time, but what she emanated was a generosity and this power of a love and this ability to make life happen around her and just have a life regardless of the setup. And that really, really impacted and shaped me. when I had to come up and when I met adversities in my life. I dropped into my heart always in every situation. So for me, that is an incredible thing, because usually we shut down the heart when life happens onto us. We'll shut down our heart in order to protect it. But I met life and I kept that heart wide open.
Well, talk about that, if you don't mind sharing, because, when we think about that oppression of the spirit of women and men as children and the sacredness of the child, it's interesting that we're doing this interview on the anniversary of my son's 5-year anniversary of his passing. And just that innocence that he had coming into life, that he found the world so violent. I think he was confused as why people just don't love. Why do people think it's so confusing? He was confused by the confusion. Yes.
Yes.
So if you don't mind talking about your 14-year-old soul.
Just to honor your son, thank you, and thank him right now for leading this dialogue as well, because this is an important piece to share, and this, I can resonate totally with that piece inside of him. At 14, and I'm aware the dialogue is going to go into a very important place, but for your listeners as well, just to say, this is coming from a wonderful place of growth and power and healing. At 14, I walked into a social worker's office and I told them that my father had been sexually abusing me. And at that time, that's something that was never done really in Ireland. Everything was kept secret. You don't speak about it. You keep it in the home. So at 14, I chose to say no to that. I chose that I wanted this to end for me, that I did not want to have to keep just putting up with something that my body was screaming at me. I have enough. I can't do this anymore. And this got revealed into my family. The social worker, straight away, she believed me. She drove me home. And my mother was very sick in the bed during this time. And she brought me into the room and she said, I'm from the school and your daughter has something she needs to speak with you about. My dad was very uncomfortable. I knew he knew. I could feel it off him. So I was left in a room, and here I am looking at my mother, who she has ulcer colitis of the bowels, and she was very sick at the time. And I tried my best. She kept saying, are you pregnant? Is there something you're in trouble with? And all I kept repeating was, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I felt so responsible for what I was about to speak into the room and put upon her in the bed, because I was already aware of her fragility. And in that moment, she met me and I looked at her and I cried and I just said, I'm sorry, Mom, Dad has been sexually abusing me. And she took a deep breath and the sickness just came through her face more, and she sat up. And she started crying and she was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then it turned into the fucking, the bastard, I'll kill him. And my dad came into the room and my mother lost it. And, you're to go, you're to pack your things, you're to get out of this house. How could you do this to her? How could you? In that moment, I could not take in the room, my dad. I buried my face into my mother's womb. It was the only place I found protection. I just put my face into her womb, and the social worker left eventually and my dad left. And that night he came back and he said to my mother, look, please, I don't know where to go. Who can I tell about this? I'll be killed. And my mother casted him into the sitting room and he remained there for months. And the only knowing of his presence in the house was the food tray always left outside of the sitting room.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's like to think he was in a prison in his own home, that he even got the food tray slid to him. I mean, this is such powerful imagery. I can feel it.
Sure. So for me, I was sharing the bed with my mother. I didn't like this setup. It felt too much for me. And then I was met always with the social worker and the police, what are you going to do? Do you want to make a statement? And I asked, if I make a statement, what does this look like? And they explained, he will go to prison. In a few years, he will come back out. That night, Kate, when I heard it, I fell asleep, and I'll never forget this profound dream, whether it was my higher self, I don't know. In the dream, a presence came up beside me and said, look, in the dream, my father was being arrested. He was put in a police car. And my dad looked back at me as he was driving away. And then the voice said, look into his heart. And in his heart was a light. And I saw him in prison for years. And this light was just going down and down and duller. And I realized if I put him in here, it's going to destroy the soul of this human being. And I turned, and Christ was standing there looking at me with love and compassion and said to me, love is the only way to heal this, Karen. And I'm 14, and I woke up and I made a decision. I'm not putting him in prison. Nobody around me in my life. And I knew that was the right thing to do. In the depths of my soul and my heart knew, you don't do this. You're not here to condemn him. You're not to put him into prison. But when I voiced that to everyone, their negativity and their fear and their confusion and everything became the very negativity that I took in, that I digested, that I put inside of myself. And as a result of taking on all of their negativity, because they had fear, that's not what you do. This is not how you do it. You do it this way. It made me turn against myself. It really made me not trust in myself anymore. I questioned Karen in that moment. I disconnected from knowing the true way on this experience with the abuse. And as a result of that, I turned inward. I turned in on myself. I became very violent towards people. I was homeless at 14. I started doing drugs. I used my body as a sex object just to have affection. And at 15, I had so much a feeling I did not fit in to this world and its ways and its system that I ended up hating me this much. And I wanted out of the madness that on that night, I ended up taking an overdose, and I really wanted to end my life. Really, I couldn't cope being here on this planet. It all felt very mixed up. I couldn't cope with it. And I couldn't cope with me. I really could not cope with. But I didn't realize that I couldn't cope with the hate of me. I couldn't see that. I didn't have that maturity.
So the hatred that was the fear of other people projecting it onto you. Yeah. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So when I knew from that dream, when I listened to my heart, I knew the way I was going to heal was to not do it this way, the way that systems are set up, which was put him into prison. He'll do his time, but he'd come out more broken than when he went in. And I saw that. And I saw that this was not going to be of any benefit for anyone. So when I decided not to do that, people were they could not understand that. And because they couldn't understand me, they made me I started to think that I was wrong, that there was something wrong with me because I'm 14, I'm very young in my maturity. So I told myself the story that who I am is not okay. I'm not okay. And I don't fit in. I don't belong. I'm not part of anything. I can't fit in here because I felt very outside of that matrix that really existed.
So can you talk about that from like a psychological or spiritual perspective for the viewers and listeners? Because I went through a similar thing, right? So when something tragic happens to you, you think if you make a decision on how you're going to deal with that with the place of love, you would never think that people would turn against you because of your decision to do things with love. It's bizarre. I was so in shock and awe when that happened, when I decided to do grief different. So what's going on with people, and how can we bring light to people and understanding that their decision is right and true?
Yeah. If I take what you've asked and I also take the lens and put it back onto what I just said about my situation, you use the word, you chose to do it differently. I was choosing it to be different as well. But that indifference did not fit into what was the norm of that timeline. Okay. Everyone was so educated to want to punish anyone who did wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I was able to see through all of that, that nobody was going to heal if I got on the pattern and the program and the systemic cycle of, if I punish, it will lead to an outcome. There wasn't going to be an outcome, Kate. And I knew this. There actually wasn't going to be an outcome. But because I went against what society had in place, which was a system and a structure, and I went against that, it really brought up a lot of fear in other people, and their consciousness could not see it through the vibration that I saw it. And that is okay too. However, what happened to the 14-year-old is that I embodied their projection. I allowed their projection become, I personalized it. I listened to it. I truly believed maybe I am the one who's wrong. Maybe I have it all wrong. I really became so lost. Whereas prior to that, I knew it was right. I knew the decision was really, really, really right. Now, fast forward to when I was 19 and I sat with my father. You know, I came home, during that timeline of 14 and 19 and being on the streets and demanding a job at 16 and cleaning rooms in a hotel, which led me to be an au pair then in France. I returned home pregnant on my beautiful son, Aaron. And 3 weeks before I give birth, his dad writes to say it's over and that he hopes my family will take care of me. So, you know, again, there's that feeling of, oh, I don't belong even with love. Nobody wants me, nothing. I don't fit in anywhere. I sat with my dad when I had my son, you know, and I told him I'm terrified. I can't ever let you alone with him. You can be granddad, but you can never be with him on your own. This is the rule. My mother was totally very clear about that with my dad. And, you know, we started to talk and my dad would come and visit the house and he could see I was struggling with money and emotionally I was struggling as a new mom, all by myself. And we sat for, I would say, a period of 6 months. And we spoke nothing only then about his childhood, my pain, my suffering, his pain, his suffering. And I realized very quickly that this man was very broken, that this man had been hurt in his own childhood, that this man was acting onto me trauma that had been done onto him. And that started to solidify a realization again that I was right not to incarcerate my own father. Mm. So with that, then I wanted to understand me and I went into therapy as a client and I became a client in that chair doing the deep work for nearly 11 years. And then I trained as a psychotherapist. And I recognized as well in my profession that my way of thinking about that time almost challenged the therapists, you know, where they were calling it Stockholm syndrome.
Everyone hear that? This is the part that's nuts. Every single person that's listening, if you think that you are alone, and because you make a choice that is a positive choice for you, that everyone thinks you're nuts, no matter what age you are, including your therapist, your accountant, your attorney, your lawyers, your family. Yeah. You got to be true to you. I love how you described it as the person, how they personalize their own trauma onto you. And as a 14-year-old girl, you took it on because because it's so confusing. But realize that this can happen at age 6 months, 5 years, 12 years old, 14, 27, 97. We personalize projections of people. And it's bizarre, but yeah, that's just nuts. My own therapist, says Karen, couldn't manage. Even I was doing it different, that she was perplexed. And I bet she didn't really believe you.
Oh, none. Listen, I went through 5 therapists. All of them were challenged. They kept saying to me, where's your anger? It was almost like they wanted me to be a victim and be impacted by my experience. And I was in the room going, do I just tell them what they want to hear, or do I be fucking real about my journey in this? And again, I start to feel a bit ashamed by the way I was again. So again, here I was meeting in the mirror of another person that the way I am is not fitting for the way of the consciousness in the room and with the people around me. And again, that made me feel a little bit indifferent, you know. And training as a psychotherapist, you know, I was told by my peers, oh, we don't know if you will make it as a therapist, because when you sit in the chair with me, what happens to me very intuitively, because I had to attune into the deepest part of my own soul self, primarily to survive, I will tune into the depths of you. So when you're talking in the room about your piece, I'm hearing the bigger picture that's going on. So when I would have to display my therapeutic skills, and I'd have one of the teachers on the chair, and she would say something, I'd be like, okay, but right now I want you to notice this over here in this part of your body. And I was bringing her into a process that she wouldn't want to go into. And because they didn't like that I was an intuitive therapist, because intuition was not a thing. Here again, I was being told, this isn't how you work. This isn't how you do the work. So I had to postpone again my authenticity just to fit in.
Even with the therapist.
And even training as a therapist.
Yes. Even training as a therapist. Yes. Wild.
Because it's all, and I'm so sorry to any therapist out there, you know, I apologize to your profession. I am one, I love one, but it is a ticking of the fucking box. And if you're the teacher in the room, you will, you're going to absorb this ideology and love the idealization transference and think you are a something in the room, and that the students are of a different vibration, and therefore they have to, like I grew up in Ireland, you put your fingers on your lips, you conform. You do as you're told, you conform. So thank God I'm not a soul that will conform to anything. God, now I can say that. But my journey to reclaiming my own, you know, sovereignty, internal sovereignty of here, where I can feel the beat of my power in me as a soul and a human being, you know, that was such a long journey to come home to that in myself, and not an easy one, because I had to, number one, I had to get over what it is I think you thought of me. I had to get over the fear of that. I had to get over showing up in the world, being a somebody for others. I had to get over the fear of being rejected. There was so much that I had to get over and get through in order, as I can only say it, metaphorically, to arrive in a field that is of pure clearing, and there's nothing obstructing your way, and you just see the truth of it all so clearly. And it took me a long time to come home to the truth of Karen. Now I can look back at that 14-year-old and I can say, you are a fucking beautiful, epic warrior. Epigenetically, intergenerationally, you are, you know, you hear it. The ancestors gather when you're in the birthing room, being birthed, chanting, is this going to be the one? Is this going to be the one? Is this going to be the one to do the work? And I can honestly say I am that one who has truly come in to do the work. My father, when I was in France, I wrote him a letter. I crashed in France, and I was very gifted by life that the au pair mother was this healer. I did not know this. I knew she was a cranial therapist and an osteopath. I crashed. I'm only 17 in France. I crashed on the scooter, crack my ribs, break my finger, carry the scooter back up. The beautiful woman puts her hands on me, heals me, ribs are perfect, fingers are perfect, looks at me into the eyes, hand on my heart she puts, and says, if you don't learn about forgiveness, you're going to manifest a lot of illness in this body, Karen. You have to learn to let go of this trauma. Those words really stayed. They accompanied me when we went to St. Lucia. We were there for 3 months, and I would take the baby with me in her pram, and I'd go sit on a beach and contemplate the words, forgiveness, forgiveness. And I would look out over the vast ocean, feeling connected again to God. and Christ, you know, that vibration that was with me in the dream. And I would say, how do I forgive? Like, what do I do? You know, and probably on the third day again, and I love symbology and numbers. I mean, 333 on the third day, the third morning on that beach, you know, I hear the words, you write a letter from your heart. And I realized I have not been in my heart about this ever since that day. I was in the heart when I made that decision, but I had closed the heart because of you would say, digest and the projections of everyone. And I did. I wrote my dad a letter, and I said to him, you know, I've carried so much pain. I don't want this in my body. It needs to go back to you. It needs to go home to the sender. I have to give it back to you. I do forgive you. I will forgive you. I may never forget. I'm not saying what happened was okay. And they're the words I can only remember of the letter. And I posted it. God, I put about 100 stamps on the little envelope in St. Lucia Island to make sure it got to Ireland.
Wow.
And in the
really
moment, yeah, I mean, I was licking like about
that's
50.
crazy.
Yeah.
That wasn't gonna not make it for lack of postage. I mean, tell me that is an urgency.
No,
oh, that is so
the moment I wrote it, my body felt light. So I learned a very beautiful lesson. If it's right, it's going to feel light. If it's wrong, it's going to be heavy. And I had lived in the heaviness from when I took on the negativity up till that moment. And here I was feeling light again, like I did that day after the dream. I felt super light in my body. Yeah. And my mother later disclosed that every night she would take out that letter when she was asleep, and he would read it and he would cry and cry and cry. I heard he was remorseful. I heard he was ready to meet this with me. That's what I knew. So when I came home and had my son and we talked, and, you know, he said that to me. He said, when you told me you forgave me, he said, Karen, I knew I could be a better man. And in truth, Kate, to this day, like all of my siblings obviously knew. I mean, it was very outed when I was 14. The neighbors knew, the aunts and uncles. It was never hidden. But all of our, you know, our own partners and my siblings' partners, they all know. The husbands and wives know. Yes. My children know about it, you know, but they still love him. They call him granddad. They know about him. And thankfully, they have that capacity to say, you know, who he is now, though, is a very beautiful soul. Who he is now, I wish I had grown up, you know. But the gift I have gifted him, the day he transitions off this planet, we are going to bow to each other for the work we've done on this planet as a soul. I honor the soul in that human, and he honored the soul in me. We contracted for this in a real way. We knew, and I believe in that. And, you know, your philosophy of life is going to be very important, because it's either going to sustain you or rob you. My philosophy is that as souls, we choose to come in to live out these experiences in order, hopefully, if I go back to Donald Walsh, Conversations with God, when he says, it's to not forget that we're all light, you know, that the other will slow down their vibration, will hurt us, in order maybe to teach us something more. And my spiritual teacher always said, it's not here to hurt you. It's here to wake you up to the truth of that you are. You know, and my dad allowed me to reclaim my redemptive heart. And he allowed me to really experience the truth of forgiveness and the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't weak. It's not saying, I accept what you did, or I give permission to what has happened in my life. Forgiveness is saying, in spite of the pain and the suffering of what has happened to me, I can still see the humanity and the humaneness inside of you. And I'm willing to see that in you more than the uglier parts. That to me is what forgiveness is. And that's love. That's pure love.
Are you ready to claim your inner badass? Pick up my copy of my best-selling book, Claim Your Inner Badass: How to Live with Courage and Unleash Your Personal Power. Available now on Amazon.
Unconditional
what would be, just from this perspective, just because I understand this so much, but I understand also too that many people will hear this and go, what the?
Yeah.
What are you, crazy? What, you crazy lady? Ultimately, I guess, why is it that you still view this whole thing that you've gone through in an honoring kind of way that makes it worthwhile? Because some people are going to hear you and go, I ain't ever going to say that out loud because look at what she went through. This doesn't sound like there's much of a benefit. I'm being serious.
Mm-hmm.
What's the benefit? Why would someone want to decide to choose love and not incriminate a person who has done wrong? The eye for the eye kind of like philosophy. That's actually, I don't believe in this at all.
Look, if I had incarcerated my dad and the system was truly set up to really reform and bring out the best of the humanity aspect within that soul, then I would have done that. I would have chosen that. Mm-hmm. For me, if I look at the spiritual side of things, okay, I feel a lot of systems have been built on fear. And I'm not judging that. Mm-hmm. Anything I say is without judgment. It's from that space of neutrality, because it allows me then, without attachment, to really think this out very clearly. Okay, because I always want the direction of things to go in a way that's more healing and beneficial. I truly believe, and even the word, of course, the word sexual abuse is very loaded with a lot of history and pain and suffering in it as a word. And because of that, then it means that we're all going to look at it from that particular lens. And then, of course, we're going to build up, punishment programs based on that vibration. Again, I'm not judging that. Mm-hmm. Something in me knew that this vibration was not going to work for this situation, for this partnership. I just knew that. It's not because it's my dad. Had it been someone else who had consistently sexually abused me for all of those years, and it was the same, again, signature vibration, I would have known it as well in that moment. I am very grateful that I listened to the heart and the soul of myself. I think that's the piece I want people to take away. If you know in your heart and soul that the right thing to do, and you know it's the truth of you, is to put somebody and incarcerate somebody, do that. You have to do that. We all have to do what's ultimately the real truth for ourselves, the real truth. If we don't do what's the real truth for us, we will suffer. We will suffer. So if you have to do it the other way, you have to do that. That is what you're here to do. You're here to have that experience. So for me, I can't make people meet me on where I'm at. I can only honestly say to people, when I went with myself and did what was right for me personally, it felt and it healed me quicker than when I went against it all. When I went against the knowing of the truth for me. And I think we see that a lot anyway in society, where people don't know what is the right outcome for them, and they're very confused, and they might ring their friends, or, they can't find it from within them, and they're sucked up in a vortex, a vacuum, a void of disconnection from their inner ultimate truth, because they have a fear of what others would think of them or how others will experience them, and that's more damaging to me. That hurts. I've been there. That bloody hurts the self and the soul in a wonderful way. I've come in and I'm going to go out again. But I am here to truly, the minute I showed up in this human body called Karen, I have taken on what's called my inheritance from the divine. I have a divine right to my expression of myself and live this version of myself called Karen to my fullest. And I'm here for that in a real honest way. I gave that away to others to suit, to fit in, but I never felt I fit in, Kate, when I was giving it away to others. I never felt I fitted in. I only now feel I'm very extrovert, but I'm very introvert, and I love being alone mostly, as well as with people. I enjoy people, but I never feel alone, because when you're sitting in the essence of yourself and you and you really appreciate you and you feel into the truth of you, there is no emptiness. There is nothing missing. There's no sense of disconnection or not being part of anything. I feel deeply woven in to the world around me and the people around me, even if I'm not interacting with them. I feel deeply woven into everything, and that's because I chose to say yes to myself and who it is I am and the truth of me as a person here, having a life experience.
That is so good. I love that. I love the holiness of the process and realizing that ultimately it's like when you free someone else, you're free. And there is, to me, nothing sweeter. And that's why I literally, I can be crying and also just experiencing at the same moment in the grief, the deepest bliss. And I think it's probably why people may think people who are spiritual or holy are mad, crazy mad. But it's just like this funny thing. I don't feel lonely. And I know you just got married and you have met and bonded with this soulmate, which is a holy experience in itself, particularly as people who have been abused. It's oftentimes the intimacy. It's very difficult to heal that deep place. And to think that you were able to heal in that place. But I would say this to you, and this is what how I want to honor you in the highest way, is that you've done the work. You were gifted the opportunity to be the one that changed the trajectory of so many people. You said it stops here with me, and I will no longer be quiet, and I'm going to be the one that sets my father free so that my father can be free, so that I can be free, so my children are free, so my husband, who I am calling in when this happened, is free, so that the future, so people feel free. Yeah. It takes one person to claim
to clean that up. And, the ayahuasca plant showed me this 4 years ago when I felt the call to go and connect with the plant medicine. I was very curious about, the consciousness of this plant. And I was like, okay, I want to go and learn something here. And she really did, and the beautiful shaman said, look, she's going to show up inside of your psyche eye based on how you are consciously. And she was dressed in Egyptian clothes. She was a beautiful African, gorgeous, beautiful Black, wonderful woman. It was the power of her. And, she brought me back to that moment of being a child lying on my back and a moment when, it's oral sex is happening onto my body and how I could never look. I was always terrified to see the picture. And she told me, please look. And when I looked, what I saw was not my dad. I saw the energy of him, but the historical programming and the abuse pattern. And I saw hundreds of male energies standing behind him, hundreds. And she explained to me, because I forgave, and she said to me, you truly forgave, you have now sent light down all of that. That is now healed. But she said, you've now also healed women around you because it goes out into the vortex. And you've not only healed you, you've healed your daughter, your mother, your sister, your cousins, all women that are connected to you. And for me, that was, I had not thought of it in that way. For me, it was the work between me and my dad. I didn't think of epigenetics, what you take on through your DNA cellular. I didn't think of the intergenerational bloodline really in that moment until I could see it, the truth of it. And she showed me that I was here to heal the distorted masculine, because this is why a lot of these things were happening, and now I have a more profound respect for Mother Earth, because she's a feminine energy, and like any abuse, she has been overused. Her resources have been robbed, as feminines. That has happened to us. I watched it in my grandmother. She was being overused. Her resources, her body was being overused, and her own resources were being used up, and I recognized, okay, I'm here to really understand that. I'm a nurturer, but I need to balance the giving and the receiving. And I need to make sure that my masculine and feminine is very in harmony. And, that the next lover I bring into my life that I can be very intimate and receiving. And my only way to do that healing work was I had to do the tantric way, because I trained as a tantric teacher. I had to get a mirror out and I had to put it between my legs and become very uncomfortable at looking at a part of my body that held a lot of shame because of what had happened to me. And I had to look at it and get beyond the fear of, this looks ugly. Oh my God, it's disgusting. How can anyone like it? And then I started to talk to her and I started to tell her I bloody love her, that she is an incredible gateway into the cosmic vibration, because she can bring forth something from the unmanifested realm, pull it in through and out of her. Like, wow. So now, now I absolutely love my little Yoni. I'm like, I love her. I absolutely love her, which is me. She is me. Oh my God, she's so me. And I have a wonderful husband who would say the same. He would sing to her and speak poetry to her. That's how beautiful.
Praise the Yoni. Woohoo! Praise it.
Yeah. So look, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's the best, which I love. It's just so funny coming from two Irish girls, I mean, I'm one of 9 kids. Your grandmother
Wow.
yeah, right. So it's just, Katie McKay. But it's just such a trip to think that here we are talking about something that certainly in our religious culture, was just something you just didn't talk about, right?
No.
And I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I think that when I was growing up, it's just so interesting. I remember saying to my mother one time, Mom, like, I was upset. I was like 14. It's interesting that both of us had this, some crazy experience at 14, but this is quite interesting. My mother's perspective. I said, I just can't stop eating. I'm just always eating, Mom. And she go, plus I'm 14. I probably just got my period, I've just gotten the munchies or whatever. And like, I had shame and I was crying. She goes, Katie, she said, eating is a very sensual thing. And you're a very sensual person. And I was like, yeah.
What a beautiful woman.
Like, yeah, that's what it is. And so I have always viewed, I guess, that part of me has always been sacred, that sensual element of me. And I think I mostly had shame around it because people would always say, Katie, you're so sexy. Like, I heard sexy all the time.
Yeah.
Sexy. And I was like, ooh, is that something, like, what am I doing that's sexy? Like, am I overtly, like, I don't know. And and that's why I wrote the book, Living Sexy Fit, because it's like, let me call out the word. And now I'm like, you know what? Everyone's got an inner hottie. Everyone has it. And what are the places that we need to heal and grow and embrace so that we can all embrace the heat and the passion and the messiness of all of who we are. And obviously,
I love that.
But
I love that. I had a wonderful client come to me, and she's adorable, but she's she likes things in very, particular order. And I just said to her one day, this is your homework for therapy. And she was like, what? You're to go off and buy fishnet tights and you're to wear them and they're for you. It's not for anyone else. And she was like, what? Her shame. I was like, no. And she did. And she texted me, she took a little picture of them and she was like, Karen, I feel so sexy. And I'm like, this is another aspect of your feminine essence that you have not even tapped into, girl. I said, you're going to start, and now you will see her. And I love it. She'll wear a dress with a little slit and she's got these gorgeous little pattern tights under her. And she's loving this girly vibration coming through her. So we are meant to be so sensuous. It's where our feminine, people think, because we hear the old kind of dialogue around, women use their sexual power in a negative way. Our sexual power is really tied in with our creativity and our passion. And, that helps us find our why in life, our purpose, our mission. The woman, we are in this beautiful body that has got gorgeous curves and boobs and bombs and a shape to it. And, it's a beautiful landscape. We're here to really just be in it in such an embodied way and love the feeling of sensuousness, as you said, even if it is with eating food and with touch, it's so gorgeous feeling into that sensuous part of I love it. I just,
yes, so true. Right on. I love it. I love it too. It's what makes, it's my drug of choice. I always said.
Yeah.
Why not? It's a good stress relief. So, Well, what would be some steps that, because again, Master Your Life is obviously about the grit and determination that is required to go through transformation. But if someone wanted to think about ways that they could approach this mastery, this embracing of this divine feminine, and heal those places that have been maybe projected or personalized on us. So we're walking around in the shroud of other people's shame and guilt oftentimes. What would you recommend for those? And obviously, I'm going to share your contact information so people can reach out to you as your beautiful, deep, intuitive, and loving in light work. I want to add, because it's like you walk in this light energy. And I love the idea where I'm bringing light to dark places. That's what I do as a coach and as a friend and as a woman who walks also the face of the earth. And I know you do as well. But what would be some suggestions that you could offer our community?
Yeah. Do you know what I think is a lovely one always to start with? I always say to people, get very curious about you. Be very curious about you. Get to understand you. What are the triggers that trigger you? Triggers are brilliant. Triggers, I love triggers. Triggers are there to teach you something more about yourself. Okay. But however, when a trigger happens, people are gone into the emotional reactivity of it, and they're in that conflict, or they're in the blame, or number one, I always say to people, get curious about you. What triggers you? Okay. You want to know the trigger? Knowing the trigger, you will know more about the beliefs and your own internal self-beliefs. They're very important, and I always say to people, what are you believing in right now about yourself? And what happens to you because you believe this about yourself? And what would it be like if you did not believe in that? And it almost gets people aware that, I don't need to be thinking or being in my life where I'm just looking at it in this particular way, that I can bring in space to look and seek and get curious in a little bit more of a way. I'd also say to people, you can't always know yourself fully, nor can I. I can only know myself based on the experience of myself. So go do something you've never done before. Put yourself into those environments where you're having to grow and upskill and up level. Because if you don't do it, life will do that for you. If you're not doing what you're being called to do here, life will, as you know, will interfere with that and put that life process onto you. So I think it's beautiful. Go do something very different, really go do something very different. If it's like playing an instrument, if it's standing up and doing a karaoke, whatever it is, and really don't take yourself so seriously, and don't personalize. Don't personalize what others think of you. They cannot know the truth of you. No one can know you. Only you can know you inwardly. Nobody can know you. So what they think of you is, my grandmother was brilliant with her mantra. It's none of your fucking business. And she's right.
Yeah.
What they think of you is none of your business. What they think of you is none of your business, but how you respond to it is really your business.
Yep. How you choose. Right. I love that. I bring thinking about that beautiful way that we can wear our prayer protection or a shroud of safety. And it can be quite symbolic, whether it's light or if it's like, imagine yourself wrapping in something. Our obligation to ourselves is to ensure safety to our soul and allowing, being very discerning on who we choose to come into our energy. And we can do even that process with love, which I think that we're so in a culture of people flipping each other off, and they did this and they did that. You could be like, oh my goodness, I see that, I see what's happening, and it's just not okay with me.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, exactly, Kate.
I don't want to change people. I'm not interested. I'm not here to change.
No.
What I'm in control of is my environment.
Exactly. And a lovely way of really kind of getting a full hold of that is, just reframing it and saying to yourself, what is this person or situation trying to teach me about myself? And I still do that. When I'm working with clients, I will always use that as an exercise of, what work is there still left in me to do that I haven't noticed until I'm sitting with somebody, or how much have I come on in terms of that piece of work, so everything is here. It's here to teach us something, you know, and if we can just hold flexibility in our mindset and not just over-identify and become too rigid, but sit back as the receptor and as the witness of everything around us, that will really support anybody on the journey of life and self-discovery. You know, you're here to learn. We've come in to have the contrasting experience. All emotions are a wonderful indication that you're still alive. Don't be afraid of the emotion. The emotion is like anything. Once you connect with it, relate to it, it will soften. It will soften in the body, you know, and the body is the way home. I can honestly say that.
Right on. Oh my gosh. The body is the way home. Do the work. It's worth it, peeps. So yes. Do the work. It's worth it. So if you had a billboard, what would you have that say if you really wanted someone to, you know, obviously you know about the billboard, but what would you want the billboard to say?
Oh, I love that. Let me see. Let me feel into that. Something nice. What would I like a billboard, a statement to say? Oh, go be you. I love that. I saw that somewhere and I just smiled. You know, just start being you. Someone else has already taken. I like that. It's simple. It's simple, but it's lovely.
It's so good. Well, I just want to thank you. This has been an absolutely incredible experience for me, listening to the story, not only in the way that you talk, but the stories you share, and your willingness to share it is very, very honoring. And I just want to, you know, just say thank you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you too. Thank you. It's been gorgeous. It's been beautiful connecting with you. Thank you. And thank you to all the listeners. You're gorgeous.
Yes.
Yeah. And you don't have to believe in me. Please know that, you know, you don't have to, you know, take my viewpoints on it all, but it's just about, can I sit with an open mind and an open heart to information like this? That's all we ever have to do.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the viewers and listeners for taking part and listening in. And if one piece of truth speaks to you, that's all it needs. One thought, one word, one belief that can change your entire life. So just go be you, because everyone else is taken. I'm Kate McKay, and thank you once again for joining us. And thank you again, Karen. I appreciate you. I see you. And until next time.
Till next time. Bye, guys.
Take good care. Thank you so much for joining us to this episode of Master Your Life with Kate McKay. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend.